that. Jason Amick, how are you?
I want money.
I know, right? So don't tell my stepdaughter, but that's her ringtone when she calls me. I want money.
I have a similar ringtone for a friend of mine that's on this call. So
Hey, here's the deal. Money makes the world go around, and it's not money that's the bad thing. It's if you fall in love with money, and money can certainly do some great things. And here we are on this industry update, and it's Monday at 2:30 Eastern, and we just want to help people fund their lives, and hopefully conversations that we create on this industry update moves people into action to be able to fund their lives at a higher level. And that's really our passion, our dream, and our desire. Rick Hale, you look good, sir.
Thank you, buddy. As do you.
Yeah. All right. So lots of interesting things, but instead of starting with numbers today, I want to start with an article. And this article was rather strange. So the largest MLS in nation signs off on a slew of big changes to listings. Now, this is not our MLS, but this is a huge MLS in California. And let me break this down for you. When the MLS has the data and they create these relationships that says, with an IDX feed, you, Rick Hale, can put the data on your website. Or Zillow, which now gets all their data through IDX, Zillow, you can put all the data on your website. But remember, the MLS owns the data and makes the rules. So now this MLS in California says, we'll let you put the listings on your website, but not only do you have to put the listing broker, you got to put the listing agent and their full contact information. So I want you to think about this for a minute. We hadn't done that in a while. Like we've allowed the listings to be data on websites and almost like lead generation tools for a lot of these aggregators. So here's the thing that there's good and bad in this conversation, actually. So in a way, if Zillow wants to advertise listings in California, they got to put the listing agent's full contact information attached to every listing. So is that necessarily, that could be a good thing for us to gain our data back. But here's the other part, Jason. If you're a Keller Williams agent in California, guess what your website has to do now?
Same thing.
Every listing that's not yours has to be disclosed, who the listing agent is and full contact information on your website, which I'm not sure a lot of agents will be excited about. But the truth is there's no distinction. So it could be, I think it's a good thing, but it could be a little disruptive too. What are y'all's thoughts?
When I read this, the first thing I thought of was Zillow. But what I thought of was those Zillow agents that are still paying tons of money to be the featured agent for that neighborhood. And now, what are they paying for? That's one of the first things I thought of. The other thing is exactly what you said. And then the last thing I thought of is everything that happens in California just trickles, because no one is going to rewrite the way that their websites work and everything like that just for California. They're going to do it for their entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
So it's going to trickle across the country,
Well,
whether we pass rules about it or not.
so let me give you the behind the scenes. Like if you've ever served in a leadership position on a board of realtors association, there's a business to the board of realtors, right? And there's a business to these MLSs. And what happened originally when Zillow came out, they would go to the MLSs and say, hey, we'll just strike you a check for the data. And the MLSs are like, hey, we're a business. That makes sense. Hey, pay us money and we'll give you the data. And what happened was Zillow, in order to stay competitive, had to actually become a brokerage And they had to switch getting their data from paying for it third party to getting it the same way you and I get it through an IDX. So what that means is they're not writing a check to the MLSs any longer. So now the MLSs and the board of directors and these real estate boards are waking up going, data is important. And you know, Gary Keller's been screaming this for 5-10 years from stage, and he took some heat for it. But as an industry, protecting our data is a big deal. Rick, you've been around a while and on board of realtors, and what's your perspective on this?
Well, there are a
Same
couple
line or
couple
different?
things come to mind. One, if you know, we've said it many times that the reason, you know, Zillow exists is they're better at marketing to our clients than we are at times, and
Yeah.
generating leads through, you know, clickbait, whatever version of how they get to people. They've got a tremendous footprint. And if it's now required that we get prominent press inside of each of those, you know, deliverables when they're showing, because obviously buyers are the source of most of their leads, and most of them are looking for homes. And so two thoughts. One, I don't think it's a bad thing if we're on every piece of marketing that they spend money on, because they outspend everybody. Secondarily, if we're the largest, most dominant brokerage in the country, we should theoretically have more listings than anyone. And so as a collective, we win in that regard too, because it's not just our brokerage, it's any brokerage that's a part of that MLS.
Yep.
Perfect. I think, like I said, I want to reiterate, this is not necessarily our market, but it's a big MLS in California, and it's important in an industry conversation to pay attention what's going on around the country, because it'll come across our desk quicker than we realize. Any
Yep.
other thoughts on this, gentlemen?
And things usually move west to east, you know, it's pretty common trends and fads.
So I'm unclear. Are we for this or against it?
I think it just is what it is.
Here's the reality, Keith. This puts the data back in our control, which means we should be for it. However, there's a lot of real estate professionals that make a lot of money on lead aggregation. So obviously, that disrupts their lead generations. However, would you vote for what's before you today, or would you vote for the future of our industry, right? Or are you going to take a short-term perspective, a long-term? Long-term, we should absolutely be for this.
Mhm.
Short-term, it could disrupt some people,
I think
including
it's-
Zillow.
I think it's going to disrupt Zillow, because yet again, a policy comes out that makes them pivot their business model. You know, they
Yeah.
buy showing time, and then the SEC files a claim against them for
Yeah.
antitrust. So yeah,
Here's the other thing. You can't have this conversation without putting an exclamation point on the end of it and say, whoever holds the listings controls the leads. That's how our industry has always been. If you're the listing agent and you're a powerhouse listing agent, this doesn't bother you as much.
right.
You built a business on lead aggregation and buyer leads off the internet, this could be disruptive. So once again, we talk leads, listings, leverage. This is go be a great listing agent. This actually will work in your favor.
I think it will. I mean, our mantra has always been your listing, your lead, and Zillow is the antithesis of that. They want your listing and they want the lead. And so if anything, it reasserts sort of that mindset that you earn the right to get marketing exposure from your listing. And this almost guarantees it if it does end up moving this way. I mean, and to, you know, Keith, it's obviously not here, but the only other question I would have is how much income does the MLS generate? And is this something we should be concerned with for their viability, or is it just icing on their cake? Our MLS system obviously charges per listing, and the economics are completely different than any other MLS, or the FMLS anyway, than any other MLS in the country. We're literally the only one that operates the way we do.
I actually heard there's two others somewhere in
Somewhere.
remote part of the world, right?
I've never heard of it, but I've been
All right.
told we're it, but I believe you. That would be a great quiz question one day.
There you go.
Big money and prizes.
All right, here are the numbers. 1,347 new listings. That is up over the last 2 weeks and on average up over the last 30 days. I think that's a really positive sign in the middle of September when normally the market slows. So I see that as a positive sign. Pendings are way up, 1,463. We hadn't been close to that in over 30 days. So all of a sudden people got back from Labor Day and wrote contracts, right? But the number that's interesting is the closings. We took a little bit of a nosedive, guys, to 1,334. Of course, Labor Day is in that number, but not a heavy part of Labor Day, because remember, I run it on Mondays. So that may be the Labor Day hangover, for lack of a better word. But if you look at our charts here, I always talk about the red and the yellow line crossing. They're crossing. What do y'all see?
Yeah.
I wonder if the 1 week's closing numbers are just an anomaly, because the absorption, we talked last week, Keith, I think you might have brought it up, absorption. And if you flip back up to the prior graph, it looks like we flipped the script again back to where it felt like it was before. When you look at the number of new listings versus number pending, we actually pended more than we listed, which goes back to a negative, a positive absorption, I guess, and that we're absorbing more than we actually listed in terms of those going under contract.
Sure. And
So-
absorption's really more of a hyper local scenario anyway. Like if I sell Chastain Park, and Chastain Park is selling 5 houses a month, and I got 15 on the market, it's going to take me 3 months to sell them out, right? If
Correct.
nothing new comes on the market. However, obviously new things come on the market and it becomes a conversation around the absorption rate. Keith, how would you explain it? You're the guru.
I don't know. It is, like seeing that graph, those numbers when they cross, when the lines cross, were there. And on previous occasions over the last several months, it has been, it's only been a few weeks and they go back the other way.
Yeah.
And and scroll just a tad more. It was, I'm trying to see what those dates were when they crossed. There we go. So mid-July, early June, they almost crossed, and then mid-April.
Yeah.
I don't know how to interpret it, but
Well, I think there
very
was a
interesting.
huge buyer rush at the beginning of March. And we sold out everything, and it took a while to build it back up. And then the real estate agents started catching on in April, May, and started having conversations with the consumers about the equity play, right? So we just rode that through the summer, and I think we sold out all the inventory by midsummer. And you saw that dip. But what I think we're seeing now is a little more of the market seasonality coming back into play, where we're moving more towards I wouldn't say a balanced market, but not such an acute seller's market. That would be my opinion.
And I believe if you look at this closely too, other than June 1st, which could be an anomaly, every single dip in the closed units usually lands mid-month. And most people just have this historical habit of closing third and fourth week or late in the month. To maybe it's prepaid interest, maybe it's just habit, but we'll see if this spikes next week back up, because we're obviously landing on mid-month data. When it comes to closed, under contracts just happen organically when houses go on the market.
So Deborah Blue put in the chat, she said, yes, end of moratorium and forbearance ending. We may see sellers making the decision to list in September 30th. Deborah Blue, can you come on screen and tell us what you mean? No, okay. That's what she put in the chat. But she's right. We do have that, the government pandemic assistance is, Katie's laughing at you, Deborah.
Hey, I could come on. I've got noise in the backgrounds and people working, so I've asked them to stop for 2 seconds.
All right.
A couple of things that I'm noticing, because I've been on a couple of these kind of marketing calls, and what I'm telling my clients and getting ready to send in my next magazine. Moratoriums ended in July. And what I feel has happened is, I'm gonna just say it like I'm thinking it. The market returned to what those of us that have been around for a while are used to after 4th of July, going back to school, things kind of quiet down, and then Labor Day happens, and then we have this mad rush between Labor Day and when the holidays start. The difference is we have all these other things going on in our environment with, lockdown, no lockdown, moratorium, all this. A lot of the REO people are starting to say that for those that, for whatever reason, are sitting on equity and are not making any payments, they're going to make a decision because we're coming for them, or they've got to go ahead and put it on the market if maybe they don't have a job, they weren't asked to come back to their job. So a decision is going to be made between now and the 30th. So if you're not talking to your sphere, if you're not talking to the military, we just had, Afghanistan, the military bases are moving their people around. Even though we don't have a lot of military bases in Atlanta, we have a huge military family here in Atlanta, and they move them around. So this is telling me, based on what I'm used to seeing, that happens when school starts. This is what the graph looks like. And then it spikes back up again, unless something weird happens like, COVID Zeta.
Yeah.
So,
It's new. It's already happening. It's called new.
Yeah. So here's what I want the message to be clear here is, we're in a strong real estate market. It may be slowing down just slightly, but you got to remember the language we've been using on this call is the needle's been all the way over in this acute seller's market, which is just not super fun for anybody. And it slowly started to come off that acute rating to where it doesn't mean we're in a buyer's market all of a sudden. It means we're still in a seller's market, just not as acute. And the crystal ball prediction, all the above, is government assistance has stopped or is stopping. And we anticipate the end of 2021 to be a strong real estate market. Would you guys add anything on top of that?
Everything I've read so far locally is saying the Atlanta market's going to be strong through the end of 2022.
Let's do it. So the lease market, like I said, we don't see a lot of things here, but I show it every week because I think this is important to know, especially if you're a property manager or somebody that deals with investments in real estate. All right. So what are the Chuck Carr stats? Chart Master Chuck. So Rick, give us the history here.
Well, Chuck, was a great agent with us in Sandy Springs, and he had some of the best data of anyone we've ever come across. And I'd guess that this goes back 15 years now. And he's brilliant with technology and decided that he's much better with technology and data than he is with real estate practices. And so he migrated his business model over and started creating basically a PowerPoint spreadsheet to help us better understand what it looks like in our economy and in our local markets. And to his credit, it's evolved every year. He adds slides, he deletes slides, he changes the metric. Certain data conveys better in one-dimensional graphs and charts. And then he's got, he's done a phenomenal job, creating like data for dummies so that anyone can get their head around this, so that they do a better job representing clients through intelligent conversations.
So
But I think we're 20 years into this. Like he's Chartmaster Chuck and has been forever that I can remember.
There you go. So Jason, you're the productivity assistant team leader in Midtown. What do you do with this data and these reports with your agents?
I go through it. I go through it with the purpose of saying, how are we setting expectations with our clients, whether buyers or sellers? You know, right now, buyers or sellers are talking to their neighbors and going, I can get whatever I want. And the reality is that's not necessarily the case, depending on the neighborhood you live in and the other, conditions of the home, et cetera. So I really do use it to say, yeah, your friends that sold 3 months ago, let's look at the numbers from 3 months ago versus right now. Days on market in Old Fourth Ward, for example, are substantially higher than they were a month ago. So no, you can't demand, putting a sign in the yard is not enough anymore.
Yep.
So it's really helping set expectations for that. And it's also to bring those buyers that are like, I'm just waiting till things calm down. Now I can say, like Mark put in the chat, I love that, Mark, that things are starting to normalize. And that's really good verbiage to show that. Yeah.
I really like that term, Mark. Shift just means something's changed from what it's been for a long period of time. Have we been in an acute seller's market for a long period of time? Kinda. I'd say a year's a long period of time.
Depends on what buyer you ask.
Sometimes the word shift feels negative.
Mhm.
Normalized feels normal, makes me feel normal, right? But anyway, this is the summary of August out of Chartmaster Chuck's thing. And the encouragement here is, if you're a true fiduciary to your clients and you're looking to bring value to your business and value to your clients, this is one of the biggest encouragements we'd make for anybody in the real estate industry, is to know your numbers, know your market. Your job is to bring advice and opinions to the table, and this is where a lot of it comes from. So let's talk about this. Number of actives in August last year, which was hot, it was 33% less this year than last year. I don't think that's a surprise, even though it's a big number. It just goes to show that the inventory was so tight this year. But the contrast in the other numbers is probably a little bigger statistic. So pendings went down 12.4%. Does that shock y'all?
Not me.
Okay. Rick?
Not really. I mean, the cyclical nature of this year versus last year, just remember last year, we really picked up a lot of speed in the summer after, second quarter was obviously everyone was a little twisted trying to figure out how to operate. And then once we did, we kind of made up for it, that modest downturn early in the year, and picked it up in the late summer for sure.
Yep.
So I'm not, and really to have true relevance, you'd almost have to look at 2019 to see the trajectory year over year, 2 years back.
Pre-COVID, right?
Correct. Because COVID, I mean, definitely an anomaly year, but an incredibly surprisingly successful year for our industry and our people.
So Keith Sharp, here's a stat for you. Last year we sold 5776, and this year we sold 5245, which is 9.2% less than the year before. But look at the comparison to number active. So August last year, we got out of the month of August with an additional 2,000 listings going towards inventory. This year, we got out of the month of August with 100 less listings going towards inventory. And it tells a totally different tale, doesn't it?
It does. And if you look at that pending ratio just above that number, 61% versus 54% the year before, we had a higher number of listings go pending this month, or higher percentage of our actives go pending. And then in this case, even though the unit count was lower, it exceeds the number of new listings. And so that, that sold ratio would be like over 100%. And so that is telling that our inventory is continuing to tighten.
Yeah.
Yep.
So all that being said, 15% failed listings over the past 3 months.
Yeah, that's crazy
seems
that that's
high.
as low. 85%, that says basically 85% succeeded. And those who have been around a minute, 2011 and 12, the fail rate was 65%, as high as 70, I think, when it peaked. So a complete flip from, the script and the downturn then versus the current market. So that's a phenomenal figure.
It's
Almost
phenomenal.
unbelievable that only 15% didn't price themselves out or condition themselves in a way that they didn't have a shot at least accepting some offer.
Yeah. But what's interesting is we romanticize the story sometimes and say everything's selling. All you gotta do is just put it out on the MLS. That 15% says there's still some skill in selling houses. That 85% probably sold because the market sold it. And those 15% were probably broken expectations or bad counsel, in my opinion. Would you agree with that assessment?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
But it's
Original
certainly
list
easier
price
to sell a
up
house now than it
$30,000
would have been
over a
last year.
Yeah. Good, Rick.
I was just going to say, it still speaks to, if the average is 35 to 40% fail rate, which is kind of a historical number, it's still a lot easier for an unseasoned, young agent to still succeed by simply getting a listing.
Yep.
It just says the power of the commission lies in the listing agent's hands.
So median list price went up $40,000 or 11.8%. On the list price, on the sales price, it went up, what's that, $56,000, 16.8% price appreciation. We've been expecting that. Here's a stat I heard today, if you want to write this number down. The average homeowner in the United States has $173,000 in equity in their house right now. And that's a lot more than they had 2 years ago.
A lot more than they had last month.
Yeah, it's going up and up, and it just goes to show that there's no better vehicle to create wealth than real estate. And we just happen to be in the profession of helping people create wealth. And one of the things that I want to drive home is we're not just agents anymore. We're home advisors. We're wealth advisors. We're financial planners, right? We do a whole lot more than just sell houses. And does our database know that? Does the consumer know that? Because there's an astronomical amount of wealth being created through real estate right now. It won't last that way forever. It's not sustainable at those rates. But certainly it's worth riding the tide at the moment.
Stephanie asked a question, Brett. She said, how can we access these charts? And I believe it's on every office's intranet. Am I correct?
Yeah, so, Steffi, I certainly get you connected, or each office should have access to it. If you reach out to your team leader or front desk or anybody, I think we can get you access. If not, you call me, I'll get you the charts.
Yeah, for Midtown, they're going up this afternoon. We just got them Friday afternoon. I saw you, Sue. I saw you going, no, they're not there yet.
Jason's confession, raise your right hand. So overarching message, Rick Hale.
I mean, the market's the market. It's still, the gold lies in the hands of the listing agent. You got to really, really work hard to generate more listings. You're guaranteed a payday.
I would throw the same thing, and then Jason, I'd give you the last word, but mine is, no matter if the MLS is changing the way listings are presented, or we're talking stats about succeeding in markets, listings is always the name of the game. And one of my favorite quotes from Mega Camp was a coach, that Jordan Freed, talking about real estate coaching and professionals. He said, any agent that always hits their listing taken goal never misses their end goal. And I think that's just such a powerful concept. Last word, Jason Hammock.
That's it. I mean, what starts on the, I like what Rick said, and I've heard it 1,000 times. What starts on the west makes its way east. So pay attention. There's also some major real estate policy changes happening in the west that are on their way to the east as well.
Perfect.
So
Would be nice to break out what sales were cash versus conventional. It sure would be. Maybe we need to find a stat person that's got it for us and we'll get it. But I love the feedback. All right. We're in and out in 30 minutes every Monday, 2:30. See ya.
bye, guys.